The Tragedy of Cinema podcast is intended as a family-friendly program that by extension strives to be inclusive to all people regardless of their ethnicity, gender, creed, or any other identifying factors in this incredibly diverse world of ours. With that said, some of the films we discuss may contain serious subject matters or have content considered morally objectionable by today's standards. We do not intend to condone or dismiss these aspects of these films, but our primary focus will be on what we believe the film succeeds at, some fun facts, and our personal enjoyment factors of each film. With that said, we hope you enjoy the show.
Hi guys, welcome back to the Tragedy of Cinema podcast. This is our episode Real Talk number 5 on the life, death, and tragedy and legacy of James Dean.
All right.
I'm your host Jimbo, and today I'm joined once again by two cohorts in crime.
ADZ, number 1.
And Kyle Z, number 2.
Kyle is always number 2. So, what we've done for this Real Talk is, since we've covered James Dean's movies, the 3 that he did,
Rebel
Without Cause, and East of Eden,
Yep.
we figured we would take a deeper dive into his life, his death, and the legacy of his movies, because Eric has suggested a long time ago, he's like, do you think that James Dean is only known for the tragedy of his death instead of his movies as part of his legacy, which makes him very larger than life person?
Yeah.
So I figured, let's just make this a Real Talk, and we can bring Eric in. We can all collaborate together and see what we can come up with. If James Dean is worthy to be called one of the greatest of all time, or even be in the same legacy talks with Elvis, Marilyn Monroe, and people of that era.
Yeah.
So Eric will be taking the life of James Dean. I have the death of James Dean, and Kyle
He's going to try and go for the legacy a little bit.
I'm
undercutting myself just a little bit right now.
Right.
I know.
Yeah,
So-
you kind of covered the legacy.
We have in
quite a
each of the
bit
movies, but if
reviewing the
But
movies.
if anybody that hasn't listened to those episodes,
Right.
we still need to go ahead and portray the movies and all that. So before we get started, I'll have a question for you guys.
Oh,
And we'll start with Eric. Eric, out of the 3 James Dean movies, which one do you think was his best performance?
I'm gonna say East of Eden probably was the I think it was the best overall movie, as well as his best performance. Again, just I don't
Like I
think
said-
once we get into this a little bit and we see his life and his young life, you'll see why I don't think that role for him as Cal was that much of a stretch
Nope.
to play that.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
So, I think East of Eden probably... Now, Rebel Without a Cause was the first movie that I'd ever seen, and that's,
Same.
it's kind of the quintessential, iconic James Dean kind of movie. Most people have seen it. But, I don't think that it was his best. I think East of Eden was Giant, and Kyle and I talked about this a little bit at breakfast, too. You probably could cut his role in Giant almost all the way out, and the movie would still stand on its own.
But I still think it was a great movie.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
it was
we
a good movie. But I think Elizabeth Taylor and
Rock Hudson.
Thank you. They could have. They carried the weight of most of the dialogue anyway, and in the scenes. Sorry, that's a long way to say East of Eden.
Kyle?
That's fair enough. And no, I completely agree with you. I think his role in the film Giant could almost be excised entirely, and he could possibly even streamline to almost a better movie in Giant in a way. Mm-hmm. You could almost take an hour of that movie and it would still be just as good.
Definitely.
In a way, I still love a 3-hour movie sometimes, and I still love a 2-hour movie sometimes. But I almost think that movie could have been streamlined 2 hours, be better than what we had. And I think Rebel Without a Cause. Even though we kind of had mixed feelings with it early on, I've kind of grown to like it a little bit more, and I think that's an excellent movie on its own right. And also, it's perhaps the best representation of how James Dean's method acting worked for that movie, and I do appreciate that. But East of Eden is where I felt kind of closest to the character he was playing, and not like James Dean the actor. I feel like East of Eden was him playing a role that I was looking at the character he played and understanding and feeling like I understood him rather than just trying to understand James Dean the person. Role Without a Cause is the most James Dean character.
Yeah.
But East of Eden is the best movie that he's acting in, and for the role the best role he's playing. So I'm going to go with East of Eden with Eric as well. East of Eden is probably my favorite. Jimbo, how do you feel?
Man, yeah, I'm going to have to go with East of Eden. And it's crazy because I told both of you when I started watching it, I was like, I don't think I'm going to like this movie. Because honestly, the first 10 minutes of the movie, maybe 20 minutes of the movie,
he's riding the train and he's
like stalking somebody. You're like, this is weird. But man, stick with it because it is a fantastic film.
Yeah.
And his character in Giant, I thought it was going to be bigger than what it was because they kept building it up like, he struck oil on his land. He was kind of like a slow farm boy that was just kind of a drifter and hanging around after he'd been fired. And then, he strikes oil, becomes richer than Rock Hudson's character. And then it kind of just fades into the background. You just see him getting bigger and bigger and bigger while, Rock Hudson and his family are...
Yeah, his life story is a smaller story in a grander narrative that he has very little to actually do with. Right. And some of those things I like his role in that movie. He still has a good little story there, but you could just cut him entirely out and still have the majority of your plot and kind of tape over those edges and you might even have a better film overall. Right. If I were making it, me being a film director.
Right. So yeah, I think we're all in agreement that East of Eden was probably his finest work. Kyle or Eric, whichever one. I'm not. I don't think I know. Did he ever win an award?
Posthumously, after he death, he actually.
It's not funny, Kyle.
I don't know the pronunciation of it right. Is it posthumous? Is it the posthumously. Thank you.
Humorously.
Say it again for me, please.
Posthumously.
Posthumously. That's got a lot of S's in it. I do bad at S's. Posthumously. I'm gonna try that as best as possible. But yes, he got 2 Oscar awards.
Okay, you got to go.
I was looking up specifically something like that too. I should have had that on hand, but I didn't because I'm a lazy boy.
Well, we're gonna go ahead and have Eric go ahead and jump into the beginnings of his life.
I'll just butt in when I get it later. But don't worry, you go ahead.
I'll just wait till your legacy would probably be good for it.
No. I should just butt in and stomp over Eric.
Let's talk about the life of James Dean a little bit. James Byron Dean, and that's even up for debate. Was he named after Lord Byron? I think his mother named him, but he was born on February the 8th, 1931 in Marion, Indiana. So he's a native Hoosier.
He's a Hoosier, baby.
He was born to Mildred Marie Wilson and Winton A. Dean, a farmer turned dental technician. His mother died. This is probably well known to most movie fans, but his mother died when Dean was only 9 years old, and he actually was subsequently raised on a farm by his aunt and uncle in Fairmount, Indiana, which that's a good road trip. It's only about 60 miles. I think he's buried there as well.
We're going to take a road trip.
But we'll talk about that more in the death and legacy part of this real talk. But yeah, I think he's actually buried in Fairmount, Indiana.
I'll save it for later. I actually have the full award list now, so I'm a little bit prepared. That should have been before.
So I was reading a book. The foreword was written by George Stevens, who was actually the director for Giant. And he wrote a foreword in a Kindle edition book that I read. It's quoted his grandmother as a designated chapter in the book, and she talks about when her son went and sent a letter. I'll just read it. It's an excerpt from the book. It says, "I'll never forget the day Winton's letter came telling us that Mildred, Dean's mother, couldn't get well. They lived in Santa Monica." So let me just stop right there. So his father, Winton, was a dental technician, and he worked at a veterans hospital here in Indiana, I think, for a while, but then he got transferred out to California, like Southern California, Santa Monica area, and then they had moved out there when Dean was young, and then subsequently his mother passed away when he was very young. She was only 29 years old. She had cancer, I believe, and she died. And so this is Winton writing back to his mother, and He says that Jimmy was just 9 then, went and asked if I could come out. Mildred, who was so young and lovely, had cancer. I took the letter to our doctor, and he judged that I'd be there 6 to 8 weeks. I was gone 7, and when I brought Mildred's body back, Jimmy was with me. For after the services out there, I gave Winton the Winslow's message. So, like his mom's body, and Dean rode with his grandmother in a train back to Indiana, I think, and the body of his mother was in tow. It says, I saw and I recall now, Winton, I want you to think this over carefully. We're talking about, they were making arrangements about who James was going to live with, because it was just his dad out there in California. The rest of the family was back on the farm in Indiana, and they came to a decision. Well, his father came to the ultimate decision that he would go live with his aunt and uncle on that farm, and that he would move back to Indiana and be around family. And this quote here is what it's talking about. So I want you to think this over carefully. If you see fit to let Jimmy come back to Fairmount, Ordinance, which is his sister, and Marcus, which would be his brother-in-law, or James Dean's aunt and uncle, would like to take him. They'll raise him for you if you want. Having a boy on the farm would be nice. And Joan was their only other child, and Marky wasn't born yet. So those were like his subsequent cousins, I guess, that were born later. Well, poor Winton just stood there and stared. And at last he said, it never could have occurred to me that I might be separated from Jimmy. But Winton knew what he faced, and he had a living to earn and didn't have a single relative in California. At last he said, you can't find a finer man than Marcus Winslow. And so far as choosing between the way my sister would mother Jimmy and how some housekeeper might take care of him, there's just no question. Hard as it was, I've always felt Winton made the right choice, particularly since it turned out that he was drafted about 18 months later. So he must have served in World War II a few months later after James went to live with his aunt and uncle.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about his troubling adolescence too, as he was growing up. And unfortunately, we kind of need to touch on this because it was part of it. It was part of his life and his early life. Excuse me. So in his adolescence, Dean sought the counsel of a friend and friendship of a local Methodist pastor. His name was Reverend James DeWeerd, who seems to have had a formative influence upon Dean, especially upon his future interests in bullfighting and car racing. That was a big part of his life later on, and theater. And according to Billy J. Harbin, Dean had an intimate relationship with this pastor, which began around the senior year of high school. And their alleged sexual relationship was suggested in Paul Alexander's book, A Boulevard of Broken Dreams. It was reported in 2011 that Dean once confided in Elizabeth Taylor that he was sexually abused by a minister approximately 2 years after his mother's death. So that puts the timeline a little bit earlier than his senior year in high school, but I know you guys on the movie Giant talked about he and Elizabeth Taylor's relationship and how distraught she was when she heard about his passing, and so they kind of bonded on the movie set of Giant, and I think you shared some details with her about his young life.
I specifically remember in the notes we took, like he's like Elizabeth Taylor felt bad for like 2 days. She's like, James Dean didn't speak to her because he felt like he told her too much, that idea, and then later he acted like nothing happened, kind of like tried to dismiss it in a way. So it kind of clearly, like, he doesn't want to acknowledge his abuses, and also, you know, one of the kind of throw them under the rug because he just didn't feel like he could deal with those kind of things that happened to him and like properly dissect them. And unfortunately, he didn't do that to his passing. So it's unfortunate he never got to deal with those kind of issues.
Yeah, I think that was something probably he struggled with most of his young life. And then just lastly on this issue, other reports on Dean's life suggested that he was either sexually abused by DeWeerd as a child or had a sexual relationship with him late as a teenager. So during his formative years, if you can imagine, that type of abuse would certainly be something that would affect you later on in life. And I mean, judging from the podcast you guys have already done, the movies you've already cut, I think there was something relative to a director with Rebel Without a Cause. There was some kind of relationship going on there.
Yeah.
And so maybe some confusion, and not to hit on it too heavily, but you certainly see the dividends played out later in his life with that situation.
Well, one commonality, even on the darker side of it, is that he was constantly seeking approval from like a paternal figure, particularly like an older man.
Yeah.
And clearly he wanted that kind of like approval from a paternal figure in whatever way he could possibly get it. And if that came into an intimate way, he would kind of gladly welcome it in a way. And that kind of speaks to not a problem of homosexuality, not specifically that, but in a problem of how he wants to ascertain approval. He wants to in any way possible,
Right.
And sexual. So it's like, and it's unfortunate that like he had such a short life that he couldn't have opportunities to overcome those problems and like get through those difficult feelings he no doubt had.
Yeah.
But that's kind of like this the tragedy once again of James Dean's life and his struggles is that he had these a clear desire to be loved by his by paternal figures and his parents and feel recognized and safe, and people have chosen to either take advantage of that or not help him.
And I think you see that specifically in East of Eden,
Yeah,
with the trying to get his love of his father.
Yeah,
Approval.
for sure, and that kind of dovetails with what I'm about to comment on here in a moment in his real life. So moving along in the timeline of his life, he lived with his aunt and uncle and cousins until graduating from Fairmount High School in 1949. After graduation, he moved back to California for a short time to live with his father and stepmother. And here's another excerpt from that book by George Stevens entitled James Dean, The Intimate Memories for Those Who Knew Him Best. It says this: it was nice that Jimmy, this was written from his grandmother's perspective, it was nice that Jimmy could spend a year with his father. Wynton had been 5 years a widower when he married Ethel Case, so he had a stepmother now in 1945. Jimmy lived with them the first year he attended Santa Monica Junior College. Later he went on to UCLA and then to New York to study at the Actors Studio. I thought this was funny, thanks to television, we felt we shared those New York days with Jimmy. We had to buy a television set as soon as he was getting parts in programs. Marcus and Orton's, his aunt and uncle that he lived with, they were one of the first ones to have a TV set around there. So his grandparents basically had to buy a television so that they could watch
Just so they could see
their
their
grandson
son.
on TV. I thought
I feel
that
like
was
they're with him
interesting.
that way.
Yeah.
That's really sweet.
Yeah, and so he did do some small parts in, I won't go through the whole list, he did small parts on television. Well, let me just mention a few. He played in a comedy called Sailor Beware in 1952. These were all very small roles. He was a young GI in 1951, a youth in a program called Piper Laurie. And then there was something with Jerry Lewis. There it is. He was a sailor in the Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis overly frantic music comedy Sailor Beware. I think I mentioned that already in 1952. And then he was in another program called Has Anyone Seen My Gal in 1952 as well. So it looks like he had some small TV roles.
Yeah.
But we obviously mostly know of him for these three iconic trilogy type movies.
Yeah, but it clearly seems to be like in the TV radio kind of realm of like the walk-on kind of actor kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like small gigs enough to get by on, but like clearly like I said, like the movies were his big ticket item, but obviously like these smaller roles were how he got by early on in his career and got his start basically.
And my number 4 category, this moves along. I just entitled this last section, he had a relationship with his father that was very disconnected. And I'm just going to read this because I think it's easier to just read it than try to describe it. But Wynton Dean spoke to the press about his son only once to writer Richard Moore, whose article about James Dean was entitled Lone Wolf, and it appeared in the August 1955 issue of Modern Screen magazine. Buried within Moore's piece, Wynton Dean's words spoke volumes about the gulf that separated his father and son. Even though James Dean had already starred in 2 major Hollywood films and was co-starring in the mammoth epic Giant, when Moore interviewed him, Wynton Dean remained perplexed by his son's choice of career and was still waiting for him to make his mark. So his dad really wanted him to go into the law, I guess, or to pick a more traditional occupation.
Yeah.
But, James Dean was really adamant about, acting and so forth. But this is a quote from that article. This is what Wynton Dean says about his son. And Jimbo and I kind of talked about this a little bit earlier, that playing Cal in the movie East of Eden couldn't have been a stretch because he probably related so many of the circumstances back to his own life. And this will kind of be made a little bit more clear when you hear James's real father's words. It says this: I'll tell you this, he says, my Jim is a tough boy to understand. At least he is for me. But maybe that's because I don't understand actors, and he's always wanted to become one. Another reason is that we were separated for a long period of time, from when he was 9 until he was 18. Those are important formative years when a boy and his father usually become close friends. Jim and I never had that closeness. It's nobody's fault, really, just circumstances. So that was a quote. There was a huge disconnect. That brings me back to my point. There's a huge disconnect between him and his father, and Kyle already talked about it a little bit. You see that come out in his acting. He's just longing for that father figure to be having a relationship with, that role model type relationship that he never really got it from his uncle, even though he lived with him during those formative years. And it really shows itself when it comes out, especially in East of Eden, but even in Rebel Without a Cause. Remember when he's just
begging his father to take control of the situation.
Yes, like
punish
Dad,
him.
you gotta
do
stand up.
anything
And when his dad wore the little apron or whatever, was cleaning up the mess on the floor, that just disgusted his character, because it's like, his dad had no backbone in that movie, and he just was a lot of little subtle ways that came out. And with James Dean being a method actor, you could see how he was sort of immersed
he
himself
desperately wanted
in that
to be a
role.
man in this boy's life, kind of thing. Like even when he's a young man, he needed a man in his life to be guiding him in a way. And it came into a lot of a lot of struggles he had later on in life for a short life he lived.
He was very close with his mother as well, which the book talks about that at some length, and that she was the one that I think it's stated in there that she wanted him to learn tap dancing, and he was practicing the violin. So she kind of it seems to indicate that she kind of had a vision for him to go into some type of show business, and that was sort of his. The close knit relationship that he had with his mom. I mean, it would have been devastating for any 9-year-old to lose their mom, but they had a really tight relationship. And on the complete opposite side of the coin was this broken, disconnected relationship with his dad. So pretty interesting.
Yeah, and even I watched a personal documentary on YouTube about like life and times of James Dean kind of stuff early on in his life. Like he seems like he had a great deal. He had a great aptitude for musical work and sports work. He was a basketball player, did a great job there. I learned that in the early movies he did, so like that too. He's a good basketball player. I believe played another sport.
Which he's only 5'7", which is interesting. But everybody in Indiana plays basketball, so.
Yeah, all Hoosiers play basketball. It's kind of it's a law of the land.
Kyle, did you play basketball?
Very little. I was the ball. Yes, but also he had a very strong aptitude for musical instruments, stuff like that too. But he did very poorly on his school work, simply. So actually, he had always had very poor grades, but he was a musician and an athlete, and that's how he kind of got by through his school career, and that's why he kind of went into pursuing the arts. Like if he wasn't an actor, he would have been a musician. He would have been a writer. He would have done something like that.
Kind of a jack of all trades.
Yeah, very
much.
creative.
A jack of all trades of artistic endeavors. He probably couldn't have been a writer because one of the things early on, I said they suspected he was dyslexic, and I believe it's like one of those things, like if James Dean were a young man today, I think he probably would have been diagnosed with some kind of degree of spectrum of attention deficit disorder, or some degree of something in that kind of near proximity or spectrum of mental issues to kind of overcome and deal with. And dyslexia also can be a symptom of that as well, not being able to focus on any one word in reading a dialogue. So that's why he kind of struggled to read and focus on his schoolwork. So it's kind of interesting to see like that's the struggles he had to be
Focus, Jimbo.
Focus. Going back to Jimbo here.
Kyle's soothing lips are
moving on to the
putting me to sleep.
Putting him to sleep. So a nice segue to that. That kind of wraps up his life portion of our real talk.
Yeah.
I don't want to call it a real cast. Real talk.
Real cast.
So I'll move on to the death portion of the.
Are we ready to talk about the death of James Dean?
Are you ready?
I am.
You're ready to die yourself.
I am ready to go. I'd like to go ahead and quote my sources that I found this information on, so that way.
Scientist.
Nice.
Yes. Yeah. So, cultofweird.com has some really cool articles.
That's awesome.
History.com and Haggerty.co.uk. So, sadly, James Dean, the 24-year-old actor, was killed on September 30th, 1955, when he collided with another vehicle in his silver Porsche 550 Spyder. Dean had just finished filming Giant, during which Warner Brothers Studios had forbidden him from racing, so he was eager to get back out on the road and race.
How much did he pay for that car?
Hang on, let me finish my thing, and then we'll get there. Maybe. It's in here somewhere. You just relax.
Pardon me for interrupting.
Yes.
Patience.
I didn't interrupt you, Eric. Let me get through my thing.
You only interrupt me.
Apologies.
That's the rule.
So as he was breaking in the new car, which he nicknamed Little, and I'm going to say B, because this is a family-friendly podcast, if you want to know, you can look it up. Some don't think it's that.
Rhymes with mustard.
Yes, kind of. But he was on his way to the races in Salinas, California. Rolf Wothrich, a Porsche mechanic who was helping Dean prepare his car for the weekend sports car races, was in the passenger seat. Dean's friend Bill Hickman, a stunt driver for Warner Brothers, and photographer Sanford H. Roth were following far behind in Dean's Ford station wagon. So he had a station wagon and he had a Porsche. Somewhere in between. Dean was actually pulled over and ticketed near Bakersfield for going 65 miles per hour in a 55 mile per hour zone. But that didn't deter him from testing the Spider's limits a little bit later. Dean left Hickman and the station wagon in the dust and headed down Route 466, now known as Route 46, for Paso Robles, where they planned to meet for dinner that evening. As Dean approached the junction of Route 46 and Route 41, a 23-year-old college student named Donald Turnipseed, yes, I'm not Turnipseed, not speed, seed,
okay.
Turnipseed.
You got it.
Was turning into the intersection. He never saw the low-profile Spider, and Dean was going way too fast to stop. Dean tried to swerve, but collided almost head-on with Turnipseed's 1950 Ford Tudor. The impact sent Turnipseed's heavy Ford sliding 39 feet down the highway, but the Spider, a much lighter car, was propelled into the air. A witness reported it doing cartwheels and smashing into the ground several times.
Jeez.
Have you ever seen a picture of the car?
Yeah.
It's just, there's like
mangled.
no roof. There's just like a convertible. When it finally stopped, Little B was a little more than a crumpled pile of aluminum and steel. Wertherick was thrown from the wreck and survived, but Dean was not so fortunate. He was trapped in the car, his foot crushed between the clutch and the brake pedal, badly injured. His neck and arms were broken, jaw fractured, and had massive internal and external injuries. Passerby stopped to help any way they could. A woman with nursing experience checked Dean for a pulse, found it very weak. She said Dean's death appeared to have been instantaneous. Hickman reached the scene about 10 minutes after the collision and pried Dean from the wreck. So the guy that's following in a station wagon was 10 minutes behind.
Yeah.
That's how fast James Dean was going, testing the limits of this. In the death of James Dean, author Warren Beth wrote that Dean died in Hickman's arms. Wertherick and Turnipseed both survived the crash. How do you think, how would you feel if you were the one that was in the wreck and you survived and you basically, I don't want to say you killed James Dean, but you're part of that. How do you, I wonder if you got any hate mail or, but even though it probably wasn't his fault, you know what I mean? There was a diagram I saw online where it showed,
Was the truck turning left?
Yeah, well, like the car, he was turning left this way, and Dean was just speeding, but it was so low to the ground, it was speeding. That when he did this, when Dean went to swerve, and he went right head on into him, man. But you can find that online. Dean was pronounced dead an hour when he finally arrived at the hospital. Within an hour later, his funeral was held in his hometown of Fairmont, Indiana. It was a closed casket to conceal his severe injuries, and he was buried in Park Cemetery there too. So let's talk a little bit about the sports car of James Dean, the Little B, the wreckage. Because there is some curses brought along with this too. I don't know if you guys know this, so we'll get to that too. The curses
a lot
of
of foreshadowing too, even up to man.
Yeah.
Even
Obi-Wan,
even the old Obi-Wan Kenobi. We'll get there. The wreckage of the Little B was bought by Dr. William F. Eschrich, a racer who had competed against Dean several times that year. Eschrich stripped out the mechanical parts for use in his Lotus 9 race car. He gave the mangled remains to George Barris, the Hollywood king of the customizers, who created the Munster coach and Dragula casket dragster for the Munsters television series, as well as the original 1966 Batmobile.
I remember that car.
Barris originally planned to rebuild the car, but he discovered the frame was too badly damaged. Instead, he welded some aluminum sheet metal over the damaged areas to stabilize the wreck and turn it into a traveling exhibit, so you could go actually travel around and pay money to go see the wreck of James Dean's car.
It's kind of
morbid.
In 1956, he loaned it to the Los Angeles chapter of the National Society Safety Council for a local car show where it was displayed as James Dean's last sports car. For the next several years, Barris showcased the car at car shows and other events around the country. Then, in 1960, Little B disappeared. Barris claimed the Spider was returning from a traffic safety show in Florida in a locked semi-trailer, but by the time it arrived in California and he opened the trailer doors, the car was gone. The story seemed a little too convenient. In his book, James Dean at Speed, author Lee Raskin wrote that he believes that as pop culture was becoming more interested in American-made big block muscle cars, interest in Dean's Porsche was fading. Barris probably wasn't making money anymore with the exhibit, and Raskin believed he invented the story of the car's disappearance so he could retire the wreck while still perpetuating the legend, especially on the anniversary of James Dean's death. And now, the curse.
The curse.
The curse of Little B. Little B may have vanished, but it seemed the car was still causing trouble. In his 1974 books, Cars of the Stars, Barris claimed that Little B's parts had cursed the cars they were used in, having been involved in numerous accidents resulting in serious injuries and death to both drivers and spectators. According to Barris, after iShrieks poached the parts for Little B, he was involved in an accident while racing his Lotus with Dean's Porsche engine. During that same race, Barris claimed another driver named Dr. McHenry, who was also using parts for Little B, lost control of the vehicle and struck a tree. iShriek did not have a very minor accident. McHenry really was using parts loaned from him from iShriek when he wrapped his car around the tree and died. Beyond that, the only other evidence of possible curses are as follows. That, as far as researchers could tell, that there was a strange fire on March 11, 1959. The Spider being stored in a garage in Fresno in preparation for an upcoming safety exhibit when it mysteriously caught on fire. 2 of the car's tires burned and the paint was scorched, but there was no other damage to the car, nor the surrounding cars or the building. The cause was never determined. That's not exactly proof that James Dean's Porsche was infused with some dark force, but it does become a bit more unsettling when you find out James Dean was warned about the car by a Jedi a week before his death. Dean encountered British actor Sir Alec Guinness, best known for his role as Obi-Wan Kenobi in the original Star Wars trilogy, outside a restaurant in Hollywood on September 23, 1955, just a week before James Dean's death. Dean introduced himself and showed off his new car that he had just traded his Porsche Speedster for 2 days earlier. Guinness said the Spider looked sinister. "If you get in that car," Guinness told Dean, "you will be found dead in it by this next week." Dean was dead 7 days later. Where is Little B now? The whereabouts of Little B is still a mystery, but one man may have the answer. In 2005, on the 50th anniversary of James Dean's death, the Volo Auto Museum in Illinois offered $1 million for the car. 10 years later, a few months after an episode of Brad Meltzer's Decoded aired, which featured the disappearance, a man contacted the museum. He claimed that at the age of 6, he had accompanied his father and another man as they hid the car behind a false wall in a building in Whatcom County, Washington. I remember this being on the news. The man remembers some key bits of overheard conversation that lent credence to his claim, and he passed a polygraph test. However, he declined to reveal the location of the building until an agreement was signed that he would receive a portion of the reward money. Wow. Volo made it clear that he would only pay if the museum gains legal possession of the car, and since the ownership of the car and the building it may be hidden is unclear, that couldn't come to an agreement. We may never know the final resting place of Little B, but the cursed parts are accounted for. The family of the late Dr. iShriek still has the engine, and a Porsche collector in Massachusetts currently owns the transaxle assembly. Neither have reported any further misfortune. I found a little bit other of the curses of the car. Let's see here. So there was 2 more deaths from it. There's also an incident where fans were injured when they attempted to steal souvenir parts for the car. And when the car was on display at a Sacramento high school, it fell off its stand, breaking a student's hip. When the car was sent by truck to Salinas, the driver lost control of the truck and crashed. He was thrown free, only seconds later to have Little B fall off the truck on top of him and crushed him to death.
Should have named it Christine.
The final mishap took place in 1916 when the car disappeared, as we talked about. There is superstitious belief that it's not just places, but objects can become cursed associated with violence and tragedy. Was Little B really cursed when Dean bought it brand new? Was they were coming into close contact with simply victims of bad luck? Or did it become cursed as a result of James Dean's violent death? According to psychometry, objects absorb the emotions of their owners and remain a permanent focus of these emotions. Although the mystery may never be solved, there may be a possibility that in the final seconds of Dean's life, he experienced such intense terror and fear that their negative energy was literally imprinted on the car.
Okay.
So, Eric, do you believe the James Dean car was cursed?
No, I don't think it was cursed. I don't believe in hexes.
Do you think it's still out there somewhere?
I mean, you told me a whole lot about the car that I did not know. I just know that it was purchased
Oh yeah, I didn't find out. I didn't have the amount in there.
Well,
How
I
much
just
was-
know it was purchased while he was filming Giant,
right?
and George Stevens in that book that I referenced earlier, he talks about his son was actually like a year or two younger than Dean, and they both used to zip around the set in between, filming, and I guess he used to just fly around.
Mm-hmm.
And the only other things that I know about it, historically wise, is that this is interesting. You might find this interesting. He decided at the last minute that he was going to drive up to Salinas. He originally was going to have the car shipped by a truck, but he decided because it was such a brand new car, which he paid $7,000 for, according to that book, that he was going to drive it so that he could, he could get used to it and, he could get familiar with the car while he drove it up to the race course. But his uncle and his dad were supposed to meet him in Salinas to watch him race in that race or whatever. But his uncle had to go back to Indiana for some reason, so he had to leave early. So at the crash site, now according to what I read, that there were 2 tickets to that race that were in his pocket that they found on his person at the crash that were for his father and his uncle that, he obviously didn't make it to. But I thought that was interesting.
Right, and not only that, but you read about how his racing buddy and the photographer were following him.
Right.
And it's really crazy if you look up the photos online because you can see that photographer was right there, dude, and you can see that mangled wreck. You know what I mean?
It was.
I also saw
gruesome looking,
I also saw a picture of where they have the gurney wheel out like right next to the car, dude. And it's incredible to look up some of those things.
What do you think, Kyle? You think it's cursed?
Like more. Oh, yeah. I always think like every time you hear about curses, you never hear about like good curses. You never like it's all about the fear and the hates and all the anger that went into this object. Now it's
right.
cursed. You never hear about like good people own things too. Die peaceful deaths is like I have this thing. Here's your dad's watch. You feel good now? No one feels happy about getting.
Yeah,
You know what's interesting is when
stuff.
you
it's
talk
always
about Alec Guinness and meeting Alec Guinness. Star Wars wasn't even out yet.
Oh yeah.
So,
this is Bridge on the River Kwai
or
Alec Guinness,
Lawrence of
not-
Arabia.
Lawrence of Arabia, Alec Guinness. Yeah.
Alec Guinness, you know what I mean? So I just think it's something that needs to be told. I'm sure if it was still out there, that Zach Baggins has probably tried to get a hold of it to put it in his museum. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And also, I'll be honest. I'm not even going to cast out that Alex Guinness said that. I remember like other actors do similar stuff before, like when Heath Ledger passed away. And then Robert De Niro was like, he played. No, it wasn't Robert De Niro. It was Jack Nicholson. It was like, he played the Joker. I don't know. It was a rough place to go. And it's like, really, you had that thought after he died?
Right.
It's one of those things where just like I feel like it sounds like Alec Guinness just asking for fame after James Dean died. How can I capitalize on it?
I don't
And,
think
like,
so. I think Alec Guinness.
I talked to him once, and then he died. So
He
now
was-
I'm significant. He made it about himself.
But I had also read that they had stopped. He had stopped for a Coke at a gas station or diner or whatever. You know what I mean? And he had just stopped for a Coke, a soda. But I think you can tell that he really loved racing, and he was just. I think that's one of the reasons he wanted to drive too, because they had just stopped him from doing all that on the set of Giant, speeding around and everything. So I think it was in his blood, and he just wanted to go, and he wanted to test the limits.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure how the road is there. I don't know if there's a lot of turns and twists in California on that stretch of road that he was on.
Well, specifically about his death too, and unfortunately, we did cover. Eric, you covered this early when we talked about the Methodist preacher who had a inappropriate relationship with him. He said like he basically taught him the idea of embracing the danger in life and like seeking immortality in the moment of having those moments of near-death experiences that you're coming in, like an immortality of the spirit to some degree, and having the moment where you feel more alive than ever, the adrenaline rushing through you and all kinds of stuff too. The preacher specifically was kind of like the one who imparted that lesson onto him, and that could be seen as almost the dooming part of his life, that he constantly kind of took on these dangerous things specifically to feel alive in those moments and not, fear death. That was the idea. Like he took risks specifically to feel alive.
Yeah, and you see that he was pulled over for doing just 10 miles over the speed limit. You see people fly around all the time these days. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
I've read
not these days,
conflicting.
always.
I've read conflicting reports too that he wasn't speeding, and that I don't know. I read something where like
No, I'm just saying we know that he was pulled over and given a ticket
he
before
was.
that. You know what I mean? He may not have even been speeding. It could have just been the way that they hit head on. You know what I mean?
The time of day, I read one account where like the sun would have been in the kid's
blinding.
eyes, and with the car being set so low to the car probably weighed nothing. Because
if you ever see it
built for speed.
It kind of looks like Herbie the Love Bug without
Yeah.
the top. Is
Yeah,
the way I picture it,
It's
or I would say
really
it looks
low
like.
to the ground, like a race car is, and you could totally understand how a kid couldn't see a car, especially if the sun was at the right angle and all of those things. But as far as going back to your original question, the whole curse thing, a lot of people try to drum up things to. But I mean, just the foreshadowing to me is more interesting. Like he did movie Rebel Without a Cause about the kid that goes over the side of the cliff and he survives, and that stuff is kind of really interesting to me. Yeah. And then I think you guys alluded to another foreshadowing in one of the other movies. I can't remember now, but it's just kind of like that kind of stuff is kind of interesting. But as far as like the whole Christine cursed car, the car's alive and it has its own entity.
Yeah, well, it's like we have all these bad stories.
Eric's not
It's like we have all these bad stories about the car, but no one has like, I got his jacket. Then I have all these good stories. That's not the thing that kind of happens, or bad stories about his jacket.
I think when we do go up to Fairmount to visit his grave, we all need to wear white T-shirts to slick our hair back. And red jackets. And maybe I'll rent a Spider. We'll drive up there in style.
Yeah, that'll be Kyle's segment, the legacy part.
All right, Kyle.
We'll get into that now.
Let's go ahead and tell us the legacy that James Dean left behind.
Yeah, let's talk about the awards he won or nominated for posthumously. I'm hopefully saying that word properly again this time.
Excellent.
Posthumously. I'm saying it so right.
Not
I'm going to say it 10 more times
because it's not laughing matter, Kyle.
It's not laughing matter. No. James Dean is the first and likely only actor to ever receive these awards. But in 1956, he was the first actor to ever be posthumously nominated for an Oscar for Best Actor in a Leading Role, specifically in the film Rebel Without a Cause. And then the very next year afterwards, he was nominated again for his role in, I believe it was in Giant. No, it was East of Eden was the first movie. Then it was Giant in the second movie the year after. So he's the first actor to be nominated posthumously at all, and likely going to be the only actor to be nominated twice posthumously ever.
Was Heath Ledger? Did he win posthumously?
Don't believe so.
Was he nominated
later? I don't remember if he was nominated at all, specifically because awards don't go to superhero movies. It's just kind of the rule of thumb. And then we have he was also posthumously nominated for the best foreign actor for best foreign actor, and both in 1956 and 57 also for East of Eden and Giant. And then in 1957 for the Brave Otto Germany, he won best actor posthumously. And that would have been for Giant as well. And then for the Golden Globes, he was winner for World Favorite Film, male, rewarded posthumously in 1957. That would have been the Giant. And then also he won the Special Achievements Award in 1956 for East of Eden. And then we have the Juzzy Awards in 1956, where he won Best Foreign Actor for East of Eden. And then for the Online Film and Television, he was added to the Hall of Fame in 2014. And then in the Petrigo Awards, he won the Best Actor posthumously for East of Eden. And then in 1960, he was given a star on the Walk of Fame in Hollywood. So that's the awards he won, all of them posthumously, obviously. And then also moving further into the legacy of his life, he is the quintessential rebel now for 1950s iconography. He's the reason so many other movies set in 1950s are focused on having fast cars and drag races and knife fights between high school students and other crazy stuff like that. He's the reason Philip J. Fry in Futurama has a red jacket, and why so many other, so many things. Actually, he's the quintessential rebel. In that kind of sense, he set that framework up. And he is the poster boy for the disenfranchised youth of the 1950s and a post-World War II America, having to deal in a world where your father may not have come back from World War II, or your father came back and is now not the man you were hoping for, and those kind of things too. Being a disenfranchised young adult for the time, and being I don't have anyone that I feel like I can rely upon. Having that feeling, especially in more of rural neighborhoods or suburban neighborhoods, not like New York City or California, where you feel like the world's your oyster and the opportunities everywhere, feeling trapped in your own town. He became the quintessential man that represented all those kind of anxieties that so many Americans felt in that Pacific era, and he did. That's why I think he was so beloved. That after that film released, and why so many people were saddened.
They were weeping in the movie theaters.
Yeah, weeping in the movie theaters.
We talked about, I believe it was in the Giant episode, that people went to the premiere or whatever, and they didn't think it was real that he had died,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
and they were wanting him to come out, and when they found out that he wasn't, they were just all shocked and mad. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's one thing. Like, it was so shocking that he passed away that people like truths of the night made a conspiracy theory. Like it was actually like, no, this is just the drum roll for the this is just the drum up the giant movie specifically. This is just fake news. Those kind of stuff like that too, which it happens in all kinds of real world disasters, and that's how the death of James Dean was treated by those people in the 1950s. So that's like how important he was to that generation,
and
truly.
paved the way for guys like Elvis and
too.
sort of who moved along. There is a distinction between James Dean. He really gained most of his popularity, if you will, or his iconic status posthumously after he died, where Elvis, in the reverse order, sort of got to enjoy a lot of that fame, and the fame is what killed him eventually.
Yeah.
So
If he's dead.
Yeah, and I would say, Elvis. I think he took on the hopeful part of a lot of the dreams of the youth of that era.
Right.
And took like the dreams and like fulfilling those kind of things. Whereas Dean took on more of the sadness and the anxiety of that thing.
Yeah,
Like
for
Dean's
sure.
was like they were like two ends of the spectrum of how people
How they
felt in
lived
America
and-
in the
yeah,
1950s.
and how they lived and how
Elvis
they
is
died.
that happiness, joy, that party lifestyle, like having everything, all the best things, none of the bad sides, and then Dean's all the anxieties and like how fruitful his life feels going forward. So,
Right, but I believe Elvis was already a big music star
true.
before he went into
we're being
movies.
very
so-
broad with the time
Right.
here. You're right.
Well, I mean,
So-
in the mid '50s is when Elvis sort of entered the America's consciousness. Like, so it was been
What year was he on the Ed Sullivan Show?
Good question.
55, 56 maybe.
Or right around that general time.
Use those Kyle thumbs and give it that.
Yeah.
But
But I just say that to make
Do you think
make that distinction between the like Kyle said, the opposite end of the spectrum.
right. So let me ask you a question. What kind of legacy do you think James Dean would have left on the movie industry if he had not died so early?
See, that
And-
brings us back to our original question.
And if he would have survived and he would have still been alive, what movies that were made now, looking back on, you could have seen him in that role?
That's a broad question.
It is.
Like what films would he be appropriate for, like the adult role and not just the young kid role that
Right.
he played in those early films?
How would he have
How would he
transitioned,
transition to that?
as he went to an older actor,
good
or was he
question.
just going to be typecast like Anthony Perkins in Psycho, where he always played the senile, dark individual? Was he always going to be cast as the rebel, as the young kid,
The troubled youth.
right?
Yeah, he
Again.
could have been forced to like a type role. Of
Maybe
that to
West
some
Side
degree.
Story.
Yeah.
Maybe he could have been in there.
Yeah. So one of the things I say, like we talked about early on in his career, like he was kind of one of the really first actors, not necessarily first actors, but one of the early actors to specifically get into the idea of method acting and getting inside the role's headspace and like dealing with those head things. So like he would have no doubt continued that in his career, and indeed he probably would have continued to perpetuate the popularity of that idea. Like Robert De Niro and like Nicolas Cage like cite him as like a big inspiration for their acting styles and how they try to be a method actor and how that kind of reflects culture today. Like I know Jared Leto fames himself as a big method actor, Leonardo DiCaprio and other actors as well. Like they try and good actors like Leonardo DiCaprio, not Jared Leto.
Wow.
Could you see him in Scarface?
Yeah.
Oh.
That would have been very interesting to see, and he would have been close
Godfather?
to the right time. Like, yeah, I mean, I feel like he could.
So you had more time to think about that.
How-
No,
No,
I
those
just
are-
I
are
just
good.
thought of that right here while I'm
Okay,
sitting here
well,
because
how Italian is
that's
James Dean? Could it be an
interesting.
Italian? Could it be an Italian Godfather? I don't know. That goes on the right
Those are great questions, and it brings you back to the original question. I kind of changed. I kind of shifted. I might be jumping ahead here. I kind of shifted my thinking. I thought when that question first was brought to bear when we were texting back and forth, whatever. I thought, oh, he's overrated.
Because you had only watched Rebel Without a Cause.
Right. I'd only, that's fair. I'd only seen Rebel Without a Cause. I hadn't seen the full body of work. I thought it was just overrated. I thought people just, how, you look back in time and everything is rosy, in the past, and everything is,
Yeah.
biscuits and gravy or whatever. And that's
what I
not
had
the
for
right
breakfast.
expression. But anyway, you get what I'm saying. Everything's
Peaches and
wonderful.
cream.
Peaches and cream. It's wonderful. It's lovely. But, I just thought he was overrated as an actor. But once I actually started to unpack it a little bit, no, I think I would equate him to like Haley's Comet or something. He was here for a brief moment.
Once every 84 years.
And it was
Tasty.
well,
That's how it goes.
he's once in a generation, a once in a lifetime kind of actor.
Yeah.
Who is really intense for a short amount of time time, and he burned up. It's his life is over. And the quote, Natalie Wood, his co-star in Rebel Without a Cause, said this: "All of us were touched by Jimmy, and he was touched by greatness." And I think that he was great for his time, for the short amount of time that he.
Yeah.
My mindset sort of changed, because I would have said before that when I first addressed the question, I would have said, no, he's way overrated. I think people he gets this aggrandizement. He's just overblown and overinflated.
Yeah.
But
the
my
more you
mind's
look
kind of
into
changed.
it makes more sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, I would say the point, like we're speculating like what his long career would have been. I would say also the point, like, there's no reality where James Dean lives a long life. He did burn brightly in every single aspect of the world. If he didn't die at 24, he would have just likely died at 25 or 26 early on in his life. Like, there was no way that he was going to have an easy life if he didn't die at 24.
But I don't know. I think if a studio would have signed him or for a thing, he would have had more rules put on him where he wouldn't be able to enjoy the things in life either.
Yeah. Or like, hey, instead of like rules, you can't drive your car really fast, maybe like you need to go see a therapist, like badly, really need to see a therapist.
Yeah, I mean, the conflict within himself, I agree with Kyle. It would have got the better of him at some point if he wouldn't have gotten help, because I think there's just too much in just the brief research that I've done on his young life, that there's just too much in his young life that was troubling, that would have showed itself later in life.
He would eventually have turned to some different vices, if it was in the alcohol or drugs or like anything else like that. Like something would kind of have to tear him down if he didn't go back and like peel back those layers and help himself. And that's what I think kind of like is evident in his life, that he was so disenfranchised he did lose himself, and that's why he died so tragically and early.
Which oddly enough cements his legacy even more. As
as that icon. Yeah.
Do you think him and Elvis would have ever teamed up to do a duo in a movie?
They may still, who knows?
Blue Hawaii too.
Finding Jack too.
I'm just saying,
worry.
Elvis always had those sidekicks in his movies, or most of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The same token, I don't know if I'd ever see James Dean in a musical either.
So
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that'd be funny.
I just think.
Yeah, so one thing I wanted to dive deeper in, just like that was like the one final point I wanted to do with the legacy, is that like I think like the Finding Jack movie, where he's going to be, if that movie ever actually comes to see the light of day, because I honestly don't know if that movie's going to get released at this point because I can't find any news stories about it at all. If I do, I'll post them in the Facebook group. Don't worry. But like they're going to use a CG animated James Dean to play a role in a Vietnam War film, and it's caused a lot of controversy when they initially announced that back in 2019, because they're talking about like using the rights of deceased actors instead of actually casting new actors and bringing up new opportunities for new roles to be played. And originally, before they got James Dean to do that, they were considering Elvis Presley, but the Elvis Presley estate said no, so they went with James Dean instead. So
Priscilla said no?
Yeah. So James Dean's legacy is now going to be about actors' rights to a degree, and the rights to their likeness, and also the legacy of their likeness, and how that should be treated by companies and movies and art in general in the near future. Assuming, Finding Jack releases and becomes that focal point for that discussion. It looks like it may be. I don't know if this one will ever see the light of day anymore, because like I said, news stories kind of like dropped off in 2020 and haven't picked up since, and I can't find anything about it.
If they do release that, are they going to have somebody dub his voice, or are they going to go back and do all the interviews? And,
similar in like Star Wars Rogue One, Star Wars Rogue One. I was wrong one. Like they had
Leia.
The general, the evil general. I forgot his name.
Tarkin.
Grand Moff Tarkin, the original actor for that. They used a different actor stand-in to do the voice role and do the acting, and then they just they kind of dubbed his. In some cases they dubbed or modernized his voice, but also they did use the original voice actors, the original actor's voice as well in the role to kind of mask it and kind of blend it in a little bit. And they're looking at doing that similar stuff more commonly. And if they do it more commonly, then that means like regular actors are going to lose their roles to CG artists. And CG artists, of course, don't have unions. They don't have the same rights.
That's a problem.
You can just pump it out to an army of CG artists in a random place, pay them poorly, and then force them to do this work to make these big budget movies in the future, instead of paying like Robert De Niro $500 million.
There is a movie, I don't know if either of you have saw it. I think it's called Simone, and it is about Al Pacino, I do believe, creates this woman that's only on the internet. Like, she's an actress and everything on the internet. Nobody's ever seen her. You know what I mean? It's a very interesting movie. You need to watch it.
Yeah.
Basically, he's in this warehouse. He's got all these computers set up, and he's actually just makes sure he can make her voice move and her eyes and all that. So that's something probably what they're going along the lines of.
That's really going along. But I see, like, with Finding Jack, specifically the news around the casting and Finding Jack, that's where that controversy seems to, like, angered other actors. And I feel like this is, like, part of, like I said, if this continues to go forward, that James Dean will become the focal point for that controversy and how the legacy of likeness of these characters will be going forward. So that's part of James Dean's legacy now of like, who knows, maybe we'll get a film where Elvis Presley and James Dean are in a movie together as CG characters.
That new Elvis
like
Presley movie looks good.
Yeah, I want to go
I'm
see
excited
it
for that
summer.
too.
Tom Hanks with Colonel Parker.
Yeah.
So, well, there you have it. Touching on the life, death, and legacy of James Dean. Let us know what you think about James Dean's life. Send me an email at thetragedycinema@gmail.com. For me, I think he's if you're just basing on Rebel Without a Cause, you've probably really never even touched the legacy of James Dean.
It's easy to dismiss him if you've only seen the Rebel
If you've
Without
only
Cause.
seen that, and that's all I knew him for.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
East of Eden, I thought, man, this sounds like a stupid film,
Yeah.
honestly. And then Giant, you're like, I'm not a big Western guy, so I was like, I don't know how I'm going to feel about that. But that was a great movie, too. But East of Eden is fantastic.
Yeah.
Stick with it. I'm telling you, those first 10 minutes or 20 minutes, you're going to want to give up. I told Eric, I said, don't give up on it. You got to go through it. I was like, it's weird at the beginning. You're going to be like, this is a weird movie.
You can only taste the sweetness of his story when you have the whole meal. That's kind of the thing. It's like, once it all comes together, then you enjoy it.
So, I mean, I wish he would have stuck around longer just to see what else he would have produced and if what he did produce would be as great as these movies. Because I wouldn't have wanted him to just start accepting roles just for the sake of accepting roles. Because I think that's when some actors, let's say Nick Cage. I like Nick Cage movies, but when he starts just accepting every offer because he's in debt and he has to pay for that,
owes
some
the
of those
IRS.
movies, some of those movies are terrible.
Yeah, it's a tarnish on their whole career and legacy. You're right.
Yeah. So I wouldn't want to see him tarnish his legacy over something stupid, or I wouldn't have wanted to see him get in trouble later with the law or whatever for
some
doing
random
some stupid stuff,
controversy
or
could have,
accidentally killing somebody from being drugged up, alcohol, whatever. Even racing. He may have came on to become a great race car driver. You never know. He could have came to the Indy 500 and raced.
Or also,
you never know.
his relationships could have come to light in the 60s and had a huge controversy about that. You don't know.
Right.
Like, those kind of things. Like, his life could have gone so many different ways, and none of them really sounded like it would have gone that well for him.
Well, I mean, we've talked about how he was on the set of some of his movies anyway, and he was kind of a bear to deal with on the set of his movies.
Yeah,
so.
George Stevens, I guess they did not get along at
No,
all
no.
on the set of Giant.
No.
They despised one another.
Yes,
It
and
was a constant struggle.
yeah. So I mean, I don't know what kind of training he had as an actor, but I think it was Rebel Without a Cause. Maybe East of Eden, when he would be laying in the fetal position, and they say,
Rebel Without a Cause is that
and
movie,
they would say, act. He'd stand up and start doing his lines, and I was like, this is kind of weird, but whatever works. So yeah, I mean, honestly,
Where do you land with it? Do you think he's overrated, or do you think he's duly worthy of all of the accolades?
okay, this is the way I see it. Okay, you can agree with me. You don't have to agree with me.
No.
I think his movies were good. East of Eden was fantastic. Do I believe that he should be put in the same category as Marilyn Monroe and Elvis Presley? No. I think he's a different tier, if you will. I understand why they put him there because of the time, the 50s.
Yeah.
I guess that's the reason he's there. But I don't think he deserves the same accolades as those two from what they accomplished in their life. Even though what he accomplished in his short time in his life was just as good, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying.
Well, IMDb,
because he
he
has
is in the top. Well, according to their score, he is in the top 50 of all time. I don't know
Well,
what
of actors?
number he was. Yeah, but
Yeah.
I mean, those are all.
But I mean, you look at his 3 movies; they are fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, 2.5.
his
I guess you wouldn't
catalog
even have to count this Giant as one of his movies, even though he had a cameo. I call it a cameo
Yeah.
role.
Almost. I understand what you mean.
So, but yeah,
I get it.
I'm going with East of Eden as his great movie. Eric, do you think he's overrated?
No, like I said, my opinion changed the more I dug into the context of research and so forth, and then I actually saw all 3 movies. Yeah, it changed. I think
I don't want to say overrated because I think that's too powerful of a word.
Yeah.
Overrated implies some like generality of like positivity about him. Like he accomplished so much. Like no, he didn't accomplish so much, but he is like a focal point of like looking at this, and now you understand so much more about the world
Yeah.
because he was the icon for like all those
All of
feelings.
the 50s.
He did that perfectly.
The 50s
that doesn't mean
teenager,
that he himself was like some amazing person.
Yeah.
He just happened to have all these aspects together in one person at the same time.
Yeah,
I
mean, yeah, like I said, I again use the analogy of Halley's Comet. He was really intense and great in all of the things that Kyle just described for a short period of time, and yeah, I put him in iconic status. I don't think he's overrated. That might have been a bad choice of words, but,
Right.
Yeah, no, I would put him in the top 100. I don't know about the top 50.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, you have to give the guy his credit and his due for what he did in such a short amount of time.
Yeah.
Got it.
I think he's a critical piece to understanding the culture of the 50s. But I would definitely say I can't say I personally find him. I'm sure there's people that consider that overrate him entirely and do think that highly of him, but I don't think he's overrated generally. Even right now, generally he's not rated at all because no one remembers him that way.
Yeah.
We had to go and do an in-depth study about this. And even
You ask him about James Dean, they think you're talking about Jimmy Dean the sausage.
Jimmy Dean the sausage, exactly. Yeah.
Kyle said, "Why are we talking about a sausage?"
He would have done a promo.
sausage
He would have
person?
done a promo in like 30 years, something like that. Like Citizen Kane director, just doing promos for cereal. James Dean, 500 pounds. Yes, I like cereal.
Well, now that Kyle has derailed the life and legacy of James Dean, I think we're getting ready to come up to an end of this episode. Eric has agreed to come back for some more real talks here in the near future. We'll put it out in a future episode of what we're going to cover. I think I like the idea of having a topic for the real talk instead of just coming in and just
riffing.
Yeah. Because you can go a lot of different directions, and this actually, even though there's a lot of information,
Somewhat cohesive.
it actually draws us back to a main focal point, and I think I really enjoyed that. So, I think one of the next ones we'll probably do is your personal top 10 actresses and why, maybe something like that. I also think I want to cover maybe like cursed and tragedies on the film sets. There's a lot with the Twilight Zone movie. There's a lot with The Crow. There's a lot with The Exorcist. There's just a lot of different movies that we could talk about there, and the mishaps that happened on the set, and the curses, as Eric likes to say, that happened with the film and thereafter. So, with that being said, I think this Real Talk number 5 is coming to a close, and that's a wrap.
And cut.